Next, will there be counter tariffs towards the US?
President Trump has withdrawn his threat of trade tariffs on allies opposing his ambition to take over Greenland after what he called a very productive meeting with the head of NATO. He said they'd reached an agreement on a framework for a future deal regarding the Danish Arctic territory. Denmark's foreign minister welcomed the announcement. Well, Doug Lute is a former US ambassador to NATO. He was speaking earlier to my colleague Sumi Somaskanda about what the US military presence in Greenland looks like right now.
Well, there's a single base in the northwest corner of Greenland, which is essentially an early warning outpost. And it's an early warning post for the potential nuclear attacks, long-range missile or air attacks across the North Pole towards the United States. So that's it. Several hundred U.S. soldiers are there, and it performs an early warning function.
So we've seen some reporting, again, we don't really know the details of this deal that President Trump has talked about that he reached with the NATO Secretary General. But when he talks about Greenland being important for the Golden Dome missile defense system, what could that possibly look like on Greenland?
Well, even the concept of the Golden Dome missile defense system has many questions. I mean, we don't really even know much beyond the title in terms of the military concept involved. But one can imagine that it involves enhanced early warning, positioned astride that air path from Russia across the North Pole to North America. And potentially, if the Golden Dome succeeds, if it actually performs as suggested, it could also involve interceptor sites in Greenland. So an enhanced presence much greater than the single U.S. base there today.
But presumably all of that is possible without the U.S. having to own Greenland, correct?
Absolutely, and this is perhaps the most curious part of this whole debate on Greenland. There's a 1951 agreement that essentially represents an open door by Denmark and Greenland to American military cooperation. So base access, basing itself, and port visits, and all of that. Essentially, the U.S. has only to ask Greenland and only to ask Denmark for increased military presence, and the answer would be yes. And this has been the case for decades.
It appears that is what's happening now. Again, we need to find out more about this agreement. But looking at the relationship between the U.S. and its NATO allies right now, how tense do you think that relationship is, given what we've seen over the last really 24 hours alone?
Well, first of all, there's a deep sigh of relief that at least the president took American military action off the table by way of his long speech today in Davos. But your previous guest hit the mark, and that is this question of trust. Look, the glue that has held NATO together now among the 32 allies for more than 75 years has been this underlying trust that we have each other's backs. And I think that the threats of military force, the threats of coercive economic measures erodes that trust severely.
Hello, a very good morning from Davos. Mr. Trump says he has agreed a framework deal on Greenland that gives him everything he wants and will last forever. Before his meeting with the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte last night, the President had been telling us the United States needed ownership of Greenland in order to defend it. But in his social media post announcing the deal last night, there was no mention of ownership. Instead, it is reported that Denmark will grant the US small pockets of land in perpetuity where military bases could be built. The idea is said to be based around the idea of the sovereign bases, the British bases, in Cyprus. Those details, though, still to be worked out. The President says it will be a great solution for the United States and for all NATO nations. And as a result, he will not be imposing tariffs on his 8 European allies.
Does it still include the United States having ownership of Greenland like you've said you wanted?
It's a long-term deal. It's the ultimate long-term deal. And I think it puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and minerals and everything else.
But at what cost? The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has been speaking here in Davos this morning. He said the old world order is unravelling at a breathtaking pace, and he welcomed President Trump's decision to back down from the threat to seize Greenland by force. He also said he was pleased that the United States was taking the threat posed by Russia in the Arctic seriously. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
We do not have to accept this new reality as fate. We are not at the mercy of this new world order. We do have a choice. We can shape the future. To succeed, we must face harsh realities and chart our course with clear-eyed realism.
Well, the Danish Prime Minister said this morning that so long as the framework is negotiated through mutual respect, then Denmark and Greenland will continue to engage with the United States. It's hard to see how Donald Trump can claim this as a victory. On the surface, it looks like a monumental climb down, but his supporters, I guess, will say only by setting out his maximalist positions was he able to focus attention on the high north, the Arctic, and NATO's role in defending it. The European leaders will certainly be breathing a sigh of relief this morning, but they're pressing ahead with this emergency summit in Brussels this evening. So let's focus a little bit on that. We've been speaking to our European correspondent, Nick Beake, who told me what we're likely to hear this evening as they react to this deal that's been done.
Europe has been stunned by what's been a pretty bewildering week, and I mean the last 24 hours really hard to get your head round. I think there's a sense that the immediate danger has passed. The threat of tariffs was removed, and of course before that Mr. Trump said that he wouldn't be using military force to take Greenland. But where does this leave the Europeans? I think this is by no means problem solved, and they'll be wanting to know what exactly was discussed behind closed doors between Mr. Rutte, the NATO chief, and Mr. Trump that enabled the US president to change his position so quickly and so drastically, having moved from saying he absolutely has to own Greenland to saying that he'd come up with a solution, or they had a framework of a deal that everyone would be happy with. Now, it's really hard to see how that could have happened so quickly, and how indeed all the Europeans will be content with what he has in mind.
I mean, I think you said earlier in the day that a lot of eggs were broken in making this omelette, and we've just been hearing in the last hour from the German Chancellor, who really echoed some of the same sentiments that we've heard from EU leaders here throughout the week. He says the old world order is unravelling at a breathtaking pace, but it doesn't have to be fate. Europe and like-minded partners can stand together. He went on, we must repair the trust in NATO democracies. Democracies do not have subordinates. They have partners and allies. And I guess if you're setting tariffs to one side as a discussion tonight there in Brussels, the real meat of the discussion will be where this relationship goes next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the substance and the style of Mr. Trump's approach that is so important. And in some cases, so damaging. The fact that he was able to use the threat of economic tariffs and bring it into the equation when they were talking about European countries standing up for the territorial integrity of one of their own. So that's the substance of it, but also the style. The way he launched into his supposed allies yesterday, you know, would have taken a lot of people, if not by surprise, because he said similar stuff before, but I think it would have wounded people because he may well have this message that he's been talking about for quite a while, that Europe's going in the wrong direction, be it on energy, be it on immigration policies. But when he delivers that to a European audience, to people's faces, I think that changes. And the way that there was the mimicry of President Macron, some sort of attempt, it seemed, at a French accent, and also the way he disparaged the Danish and the way he said they capitulated so quickly during the Second World War, but also sort of airbrushing from history the Danish contribution to the Afghanistan campaign when they stood shoulder to shoulder with the Americans and paid a very heavy price. So I think people are, you know, upset by that on the one hand, but also thinking what comes in the next 3 years of the Trump presidency.
Thanks to Nick Beak for that. We're going to take you to the main hall here in Davos because President Trump's about to take the stage. Stand by for a very Trumpian presentation. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, is going to be on stage with President Trump. Also there will be Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who's played a big role in the Middle East peace talks. Also, there will be someone called Nikolai Mladenov on stage. He's formerly the Bulgarian defense minister. He served as the special coordinator for the UN on Middle East affairs. So that's why he's here. You can see Javier Milei there as well, who's just taking the stage. So who knows who will be on here. But these are all signatories, I guess, to the new Board of Peace. There'll be a signing ceremony in this presentation that we're about to watch. These are the people who will sit on the board. But of course, the elephant in the room is the fact that none of the Europeans are there. And the British government was saying today that it's reserving judgment. There is, of course, a great concern within the European camp that President Putin, who will join the board, is being normalised. The indicted, the sanctioned President Putin sitting among others. And I guess the Europeans would say the very idea that this is supposedly a peace board while he's still at war with Ukraine really speaks for itself. So we'll wait to hear what President Trump says about it. The one thing, you know, as all these things collide today here in Davos, President Zelensky incoming, the one thing I'm going to be watching is whether he puts any pressure on President Zelensky to join this board and to sit in the room with President Putin. I mean, one of the real difficulties that Steve Witkoff has had is getting the two men in the same room. The Americans are saying that President Putin has already signed up to this board. There's no confirmation of that, incidentally, from the Kremlin. All these members, if they want to serve on the board in perpetuity, can pay a sum to do that, $1 billion. Although there's not much clarity on where that money goes, but that would mean they have a seat for life on this board, whatever it turns out to be. Some of our commentators this morning have been saying that it seems to be an alternative now to the UN and the UN Charter, which deeply concerns the Europeans. Nonetheless, there are some very prominent people joining the board. Some of the monarchs from the Middle East are on the board. Some of the pariah leaders who the Europeans wouldn't want to sit next to. The big question, of course, is what authority it has if the Europeans are not there, and what say do the Europeans have in how things move forward on Gaza and the wider Middle East if they're not represented on it? I say not represented on it, but of course one of those who will sit on it, it might not be Sir Keir Starmer, it will be a former Labour Prime Minister, Sir Tony Blair, who served, of course, as the Middle East envoy. There was some reticence initially to put him on the board, given his history in the Middle East and his role in the war in Iraq, but he is there and he will sit on the board and he will bring vast experience to it because he knows the region very well. But there in your screen are the signatories who have joined so far as we await Caroline Leavitt and Donald Trump coming on to the stage. The one issue about Donald Trump's role is, according to what's been put out so far, is that he will sit there as the chairman and he will nominate his successor, which is an interesting dynamic, isn't it, given just who is sitting there alongside him and the role that Donald Trump wants to play on the world stage. Mark Carney talked about the American hegemony the other day and how the great powers were trying to direct things in terms of international diplomacy and how the rest of them were all supposed to sit there as subordinates. And Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, was saying today that that's not really how the rules-based order is supposed to work. In a democracy, he said, you have allies and friends. You don't have subordinates. And yet all these people here sitting, waiting for the chairman to arrive, will be there in a subordinate role on this Board of Peace as Donald Trump presides over the direction of whichever way things are likely to move in terms of the Gaza peace process. Well, you can see Donald Trump coming in from stage right. Let's listen in.
Well, this is a very exciting day. Long in the making, and many countries have just received their notice, and everybody wants to be a part of it. And we'll work with many others, including the United Nations. But I want to thank you all for being here. Yesterday, we had an incredibly successful visit with many of the world's top business leaders, the best, the biggest, most successful, and foreign heads of state. And now we have one of the most important meetings of all, the official formation of what is known as the Board of Peace. I want to thank the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, and their extraordinary work. I mean, they've done an amazing job. We have peace in the Middle East. Nobody thought that was possible. We've settled 8 wars, and I believe another one's coming pretty soon. You know what that is? The one that I thought was going to be an easy one has turned out to be probably the most difficult. Last month, 29,000 people died, mostly soldiers, in Ukraine, Russia. Think of that, 29,000, 27,000 in the month before, 26,000 in the month before that. It's terrible. But we have meetings and we think we're making a lot of progress. Thanks as well to Secretary Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, and Chris Wright, U.S. Trade Representative, Jamieson Greer. They're all doing such an incredible job. Ambassador Callista Gingrich, who is here, doing a fantastic, really fantastic work. Thank you, Callista. And many other members of my administration who are so committed to peace, and they're also committed to great success. Very importantly, let me recognize the very first group of distinguished members of the Board of Peace. They will be introduced by name in just a moment. Caroline will be doing that introduction. And to each and every one of you, we are truly honored by your presence today. Leaders of countries, in most cases, very popular leaders. Some cases, not so popular, but that's the way it goes in life. Thanks as well to President Karol Nawrocki of Poland, who's a fantastic man. He just won a very big election. I'm very proud of him. Amazing. Along with former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Tony Blair. Thank you, Tony, for being here. We appreciate it. And members of the Board of Peace Executive Board, great group. This week marks the 1-year anniversary of my second inauguration as president. No administration in history has achieved such a sweeping turnaround in 12 months' time at home and abroad. We have a tremendous mandate. We won the popular vote by millions. We won every swing state to 7. They were saying, can he win all 7? Is it possible? Because it's not done. And we won all 7. We have a great mandate back at home. As I said yesterday, the U.S. economy is booming with virtually no inflation. It was 1.2% for the last 3 months, and we inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. And we have economic growth now of 5.4%, looks like. And I think that number can double and triple if we do the right things. And if we change thinking so that if you announce good numbers, the markets go up, instead of if you announce good numbers, the market goes down because everybody tries to kill it by lowering or raising interest rates depending on the situation. When America booms, the entire world booms. And we have secured commitments for over $18 trillion in new investment coming into our country, which is a record by many times over, not just by a little bit, by many times. There's no country ever in history that's gotten anywhere near that number. Slashed our trade deficit by 77%. This is in 1 year. Yesterday was 1 year. And signed historic trade deals with nations from all over the globe. Today, the world is richer, safer, and much more peaceful than it was just 1 year ago. We put out all those fires. A lot of people didn't know, including me, that some of those wars were going on. And some of them were going on for, in one case, 32 years, in another case, 35 years, and another one, 37 years. We were very happy to stop the war that had started with India and Pakistan, two nuclear nations. And I was very honored when the Prime Minister of Pakistan said President Trump saved 10 and maybe 20 million lives by getting that stopped just before bad things were going to happen. As president, I ended those 8 wars in 9 months, including Cambodia and Thailand. And by the way, many of the leaders are here. Kosovo and Serbia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia. We're working on that right now. I met yesterday with a very good general and a very good leader of Egypt. We're working on a dam that was built which precludes the Nile River from getting water. It's a little tough situation, but we'll get that settled. I really had it just about settled in my first term, and then we had a rigged election. Took me out of commission for a little while, but here I am back. We'll get it settled. But it's a pretty tough situation. A dam was built, and the water doesn't come down to the Nile. When I think of Egypt, I think of the Nile, but I think of the Nile with water in it. Armenia and Azerbaijan, who, I mean, a lot of these leaders have become my friends. They become my friends. They're here. And, of course, the war in Gaza, which is really coming to an end. We have little fires that we'll put out, but they're little. They were giant, massive fires, and now they're down to little fires, and we can put them out very easily. We have 59 countries that are involved in peace in the Middle East. Many of them not in the Middle East. They're near the Middle East, but they're not in the Middle East. And many have said that if Hamas doesn't do what they promised they would do, and I think they probably will, but they were born with rifles in their hands. They were literally born. The first day they had a rifle put into their hands, but they have to give up their weapons. And if they don't do that, it's going to be the end of them. But many countries have told me we want to go in and do it, and they really aren't countries that you traditionally think of as being involved in that. But that's a fire. Hezbollah in Lebanon, we have to do something about that. But these are, I call them remnants. They're small remnants compared to what it was before. It was massive, large, powerful countries fighting each other. In another great victory for the ultimate goal of peace, in June, we obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity with Operation, we call it Operation Midnight Hammer. And it was midnight, it was dark, no moon, and every single one of those bombs from the B-2 bombers hit the air shafts and went deep into the earth and totally obliterated everything that they were doing. They were 2 months away from having a nuclear weapon. We can't let that happen. And Iran does want to talk, and we'll talk. We've also hit ISIS in Syria, and very strongly, as you know. In my first administration, I took out al-Baghdadi, the founder of ISIS, and he was trying to start it up again because due to the tremendous talent of General Raisin Kane, as I call him, he wiped out ISIS in a period of 3 weeks in my first term. You know, we had a great first term, but the second term is, I think, blowing it away, actually. But we took out ISIS, and we had it was gone. But during the Biden administration, it formed again a little bit. We hit it very hard in Syria. And Syria, by the way, I spoke with the president, is making a lot of progress, tremendous progress, actually. We're very happy about that. We took off all sanctions, which gives them a chance to breathe. And he is working very, very hard, and I think he's going to put it all together. So many things are happening, many good things. Threats to Europe and America, the Middle East, and other places are really calming down. It's a lot different than it was just 1 year ago. Just 1 year ago, the world was actually on fire. A lot of people didn't know it. And in Nigeria, we're annihilating terrorists who are killing Christians. We've hit them very hard. They've killed thousands and thousands of Christians. What's that all about? Much of this unprecedented success is possible because I rebuilt our military in my first term, and now we're making it even stronger. We have a budget of over $1 trillion this year, and next year we're going to $1.5 trillion. Our country's never done better economically. We're taking in numbers that we've never taken in, not only the fact that the investment is at 18 trillion plus, but our jobs numbers, everything is, I think, maybe better than ever before. I think you're going to see a lot of you are investing in our country. I think you're going to be extremely happy with your investments. I think you'll see numbers like you haven't seen before. I also secured commitments from virtually all NATO allies to increase their defense spending to 5% of GDP. Everybody but Spain. I don't know what's happening with Spain. Why would they not do that? They want a free ride, I guess, huh? Every country but Spain increased to 5%. I don't know why. We're going to have to talk to Spain. With America's renewed attention to security of the Western Hemisphere, I've stopped the invasion on our southern border and designated the drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And you probably saw that we've virtually stopped almost 100% all drugs coming in by water. And now we're going to stop them on land. The land is easy. The water is tough. But that's down now. I heard it just last night. It was 97. Now it's 98.1%. And we're trying to figure out who are the 2% that are willing to get onto those boats. I don't think they watch television or the news. But we've taken out almost 100% of all of the drugs coming into the United States by water. And now we'll, I think, very easily stop them on land. That's the easy part. We wanted to wait till the other was taken care of. And earlier this month, thanks to the unrivaled skill, power, and might of the U.S. military, we have the most powerful military in the world by far. We captured the outlaw dictator, Nicolas Maduro, and the people of Venezuela are very happy about it. And we're having great relationships with the new leaders of Venezuela. The relationships have been good. We're opening up the country to our giant oil companies, and it's going very well. We've already taken out, think of this, 50 million barrels of oil, and a lot of that's going to go back to Venezuela. They'll do more income with us in a short period of time than they did in years, because as much oil as they have, and they have a lot, just about the most. After us, there's a couple of countries that are in that category, but we have the most, actually, and they're second between Venezuela and us. We have 62% of the world's oil, but they have very little production, so they'll have a lot of production. All the oil companies, we had meetings, you probably saw, all the oil companies want to go in. They want to go in immediately. They're already touring the sites. But our military was amazing. That strike was amazing. We had a second wave coming. We didn't need it. They said, no second wave. We don't want a second wave. The first wave was enough. And of course, we're working to end the horrible killing in Ukraine. a war that should never have happened and would have never happened if I were president. That was not going to happen. I used to speak to Vladimir Putin about Ukraine, and it was the apple of his eye, but he would never have ever done it. Said, you can't do that, Vladimir. As part of this historic record of major peace initiatives, today we're announcing more details regarding the Board of Peace, so important. This board has the chance to be one of the most consequential bodies ever created, and it's my enormous honor to serve as its chairman. I was very honored when they asked me to do it. We had an idea to do it, and then they came. They said, "You be the chairman." And but I take it very seriously. We have a great group of people, and incredible young people that are leading it from within. It's running beautifully. Started already, and every country, just about every country, wants to be a part of it. And we just sent out the letters a couple of days ago, and these are just the countries that are here. They happen to be in Davos. So we said, would be honored if you wanted to join us up on the stage. And it's really great. They're friends of mine. I think, let me see. Yeah, every one of them is a friend of mine. A couple, let's see, a couple I like, a couple I don't like. No, I like, actually, this group, I like every single one of them. Can you believe it? Usually I have about 2 or 3 that I can't stand. Usually I have 2 or 3 that I don't like. I don't find them up here. I like every one of these people. No, they're great people. They're great leaders. And the Board of Peace is composed of leaders, the top leaders in the world, actually. Last October, we released a plan for the permanent end to the conflict in Gaza, and I'm pleased to say that our vision was unanimously adopted by the United Nations Security Council late last year. Under phase 1 of this plan, we have painstakingly maintained that Gaza, and we're going to have it very strongly, and it's what we have, maintained the Gaza ceasefire, delivered record levels of humanitarian aid. We've given aid. You know, you used to hear all the people were starving, and it was terrible. Now we have, you don't hear that anymore. We've delivered record levels of humanitarian aid. I want to thank the United States, but I want to thank some of the countries that are sitting right up here, because they've sent great aid, aid also in the form of money, where we go out and purchase food, and you don't hear those stories anymore with people starving. And secured the release of all 20, we secured the release of all 20 living hostages. Now, I want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared and everybody for working so hard. They worked so hard, but there were 20 remaining living hostages. Now, we got hundreds out, but the last 20, I said, boy, that's going to be a tough one. I said that a year before, and it was a tough one, but we got them. Got all 20, every one of them. And we had also about 28 that were dead, but the parents wanted them just as though they were living, just as much. Some cases, it almost seemed more. It was amazing, actually, the love. But their boy had been killed in just about all cases, young men. Their boy had been killed, and they wanted the body of the boy, and it looked like it couldn't be done. And with the exception of one, and we're close on the track of that, we've got them all, every single one of them, which is amazing. It's a rough job. That was a rough job. And I've been very clear that Hamas must return that last remaining deceased hostage as well, and that will be the full commitment. And then we get on to other things, and we're committed to ensuring Gaza is demilitarized, properly governed, and beautifully rebuilt. It's going to be a great plan, and that's where the Board of Peace really started. And I think we can spread out to other things as we succeed with Gaza. We're going to be very successful in Gaza. It's going to be a great thing to watch, and we can do other things. We can do numerous other things. Once this board is completely formed, we can do pretty much whatever we want to do, and we'll do it in conjunction with the United Nations. You know, I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it, but there's tremendous potential in the United Nations, and you have some great people at the United Nations, but so far it hasn't. You know, when on the 8 wars that I ended, I never spoke to the United Nations about any of them. And you would think that I should have. You would think they could have done those 8 wars, but they couldn't have. And they tried, I guess, in some of them, but they didn't try hard enough. But there's tremendous potential with the United Nations. And I think the combination of the Board of Peace with the kind of people we have here, coupled with the United Nations, can be something very, very unique for the world. It's for the world. This isn't United States. This is for the world. As everyone can see today, the first steps toward a brighter day for the Middle East and a much safer future for the world are unfolding right before your very eyes. Together, we are in a position to have an incredible chance. I don't even call it a chance. I think it's going to happen. To end decades of suffering, stop generations of hatred and bloodshed, and forge a beautiful, everlasting, and glorious peace for that region and for the whole region of the world, because I'm calling the world a region. The world is a region. We're going to have peace in the world. And boy, would that be a great legacy for all of us. Everybody in this room is a star, or you wouldn't be here. There's a reason that you're here, and you're all stars. You're the biggest people, the most important people in the world, most powerful people in the world. And when you use that genius that you have, that very unusual, very inspired genius, when you use that for peace, the opposite of peace has no chance. So I just want to say it's tremendous to be with you, and I think this is something that we're doing that's very important. This is the most important. I was so looking forward to being here, and yesterday was a tremendous success. A lot of good things happened, but this was something that I really wanted to be here and do, and I could think of no better place because so many people were together. And now to bring the Board of Peace into full force, I ask Sheikh Isa of Bahrain and Foreign Minister Barita of Morocco to join me in signing and ratifying the Board of Peace Charter. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations,
so Donald Trump
President
signing
Trump, the charter.
The declaration for the Board of Peace alongside the Sheikh of Bahrain and the Foreign Minister of Morocco. And Caroline Levitt is now taking over proceedings and presumably will introduce some of those who sit on the Board of Peace. Let's listen in. And one by one, they're going to come up.
Next up, the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Bulgaria.
Donald Trump saying in his speech there just a short time ago that he considers all these people sitting on stage to be his close friends, which may raise some eyebrows in some circles. What might have also stood out was that the Europeans are notably absent from the stage, but sitting there is the Hungarian President Viktor Orban, once again taking a unilateral position which veers from the conceived European position. A couple of things to fact check as well during that speech. He said we have peace in the Middle East. Well, there will be a question mark over that too. Just yesterday, 11 people were killed in Gaza, including 3 journalists. There's still plenty going on in Gaza, not to mention the horrendous humanitarian situation that exists on the ground, which is yet to improve. And what is also abundantly clear is that this board of peace is not reserved entirely for issues in the Middle East. The Arabs who've joined the board say they are sitting there only on issues that pertain to Gaza, but this board, as he made clear, is going to start focusing on instability and conflict well beyond the Middle East. There may be one or two of you also reflecting on the speech he delivered, in which for large part he talked about the wars the United States had won. Iran, Midnight Hammer, al-Baghdadi, the war with IS, Maduro and the assault on Venezuela. For a time there, the label and the substance appeared to point in different directions, although I suppose he would say that it is peace by strength, which he makes no apology for. But as for the direction that we're travelling at the moment, the world, he said, was on fire a year ago. Things are calming down. Is that an accurate characterisation of where we are currently? There are lots of people who've been observing events in recent months who might question whether things are heading in the right direction. There's been a lot of talk here in Davos this week about the way the great powers are flexing their muscles, how the United Nations is being pushed out of sight by the events we're watching right now, and whether it still is a cohesive body that can deliver peace on the world stage, whether the Security Council still serves a purpose. How is it going to exist alongside the Board of Peace? These are all questions that the Europeans are asking at the moment, not to mention, of course, as well, the way in which it will in part legitimise the role of President Putin on the world stage. He doesn't sit within the G7, of course, anymore, formerly the G8, but he will sit on President Trump's Board of Peace. And I did mention earlier the interesting dynamic, really, that to all intents and purposes, President Trump sits there as the chairman, the commander-in-chief of this board. Is President Putin going to warm to that idea that he is in some way subordinate to the United States, and President Trump, who will sit there as chairman in perpetuity as long as he wants to be there, and until he names his successors? So there's an awful lot of detail we really don't know about the way this body is going to exist. And there's also some important clarifications. While we were watching that, I was on WhatsApp with our international correspondent Lise Doucette, because she was pointing out to me that actually there are various layers to this organisation, which really do need to point out. Not to mention, first of all, that Tony Blair is not on the Board of Peace, as I might have indicated earlier. He's actually on the executive board, which sits beneath it, along with 7 Americans. And Lise is saying that right at the bottom of all this, and this is an important point, are the Palestinian technocrats. So although this board will dictate what happens in Gaza, the Palestinians are almost at the bottom of the pile. That board, headed by Nikolai, who we talked about earlier, who served as the UN envoy to the Middle East. And Lee says there are some good members on that board. And then right at the top of that structure, of that pyramid, if you will, is this executive board with all the world leaders sitting on it. But as to what principles it's observing and under what authority it's making decisions, that is the big open question, because obviously international peace, resolutions that are agreed on the international stage to deal with conflict, that is done within the remit of the UN Security Council and under the UN Charter. And this is a very different construct, which we don't know very much about. And that is why Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, the UK Foreign Secretary, was saying earlier today that the UK, along with their European partners, are reserving judgment for the moment. They're not going to sign the founding principles of the Board of Peace today. What Donald Trump will make of that is very much a question. In fact, just since we've been talking about Greenland today, there's an awful lot left out there that we're going to have to discuss in the days ahead, notably that the trade agreement the Europeans signed with Donald Trump is now on hold. The European Parliament deciding yesterday they're not going to ratify that trade deal. And now they're not saying they're going to join his board of peace. And we know what sort of reaction we get when people don't go along with Donald Trump. So that will be something to watch in the days ahead. Let's just listen into a little bit more of this.
And now we have one of the most important meetings of all, the official formation of what is known as the Board of Peace. I want to thank the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, and their extraordinary work. I mean, they've done an amazing job. We have peace in the Middle East. Nobody thought that was possible. We've settled 8 wars, and I believe another one's coming pretty soon. You know what that is? The one that I thought was going to be an easy one has turned out to be probably the most difficult. Last month, 29,000 people died, mostly soldiers, in Ukraine, Russia. Think of that, 29,000, 27,000 in the month before, 26,000 in the month before that. It's terrible. But we have meetings and we think we're making a lot of progress.
So just a reminder there for those who missed the opening of the speech, how Donald Trump introduced what we're currently watching on stage, the signing, the inaugural signing of the memorandum that will open the Board of Peace. Let's bring in our security correspondent, Frank Gardner, who's been watching this. I've illustrated and set out some of the concerns the Europeans might have, Frank, and there's a lot of detail. I think actually we might not have Frank. I'm talking to him. I don't think he's there. We'll maybe join Frank shortly when we sort out his communications. Let's just listen in a little bit more to the signing ceremony while we wait for Frank.
Congratulations. If President Trump and all Board of Peace members could please take their seats in the front. Now it is my honor to introduce the United States Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who will speak about President Trump and his accomplishments. Without further ado, Secretary Rubio.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today. It's an honor to serve as the Secretary of State during a historic presidency. And it's a historic presidency because the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is someone who is not limited by what others say is possible or what others say is impossible. He's not limited by some of the things that have happened in the past, and he's willing to talk to or engage with anyone in the interest of peace, always putting the American people and our national security first, but understanding that in the world that we share with so many others, peace is paramount to all of us. We are here today because of President Trump's vision. If we go back just a few months ago, people thought what was happening in Gaza was impossible to solve. 28 hostages that were dead, others that were still living, all these hostages that were being held. No one thought that that would ever come to a resolution without more fighting and more bloodshed along the way. In fact, frankly, many thought it was intractable. And sadly, many of the institutions that have served us well, in many cases, for the last 70 years, were unable to do anything about it. But President Trump had the vision and the courage to dream the impossible, to believe that it was doable, and to pursue it with all of his heart. And he was in that capacity assisted by an extraordinary team, and I think both Jared and Steve deserve a tremendous amount of credit, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, for all the work they put in. And all of our partners here today. And now we have this Board of Peace, who I believe's possibilities are endless. Obviously, with a focus, first and foremost, on making sure that this peace deal in Gaza becomes enduring. And I know this president has it as his highest priority and will give it everything he has to make sure that this is successful. I also want to acknowledge the extraordinary leaders that are here today. This is not just a Board of Peace, this is a Board of Action. Just like President Trump is a president of action. A lot of times people like to give speeches. I've been to many of these forums, and they're not useless, and they're not, they have utility in many cases. But oftentimes in international affairs, we often find ourselves at events where people are reading these scripted statements, these strongly worded letters that they put out, but no action, nothing happens. This is a group of leaders that are about action. And the President of the United States is a president of action, of getting things done. And today is the beginning of that, of a new era and a new stage that we think is so important as a model to the rest of the world of what is possible. And clearly the focus is right now on Gaza and making sure that the plan that's about to be presented to you here today, this vision for the future of Gaza, this vision for the future of the region, is not just possible and promising. It is our destiny if we put the time and the effort that it requires, as I know this board will do. But I also think it will serve as an example of what's possible in other parts of the world. Without losing focus on what's before us now, this is what's possible for other places and other conflicts that seem impossible to solve right now. So I want to, on behalf of the United States, on behalf of the team that worked so hard on this, thank every single one of the leaders that are here today and all of the countries that have committed to joining, and many others who are going to join. Others either are not in town today or they have to go through some procedure internally in their own country because of constitutional limitations, but others will join. Many want to be a part of this effort because it is going to be a successful effort. And you see it reflected here today among countries of different backgrounds from different parts of the world, majority Christian some, majority Muslim others, who've come together. In fact, former adversaries who have joined here as part of this Board of Peace. And all was possible, and I want to acknowledge this again, because of the vision and the drive of the President of the United States. So thank you all for joining us here today. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio. Please, if you could now turn your attention to the screens for a video message from the head of the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, Dr. Ali Shaith.
Distinguished leaders, colleagues, and friends, it is an honor to be here today. I want to start by thanking President Donald J. Trump and his administration for their intensive efforts to advance peace in the whole region. I also thank Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Qatar, and Turkey as mediators, the Palestinian Authority, and members of the United Nations Security Council for welcoming.
So we'll come away from that presentation momentarily to speak to Frank Gardner, who is with us. And just let me remind our viewers, Frank, what the Secretary of State Marco Rubio just said there. Not just a board of peace, it's a board of action, a group of leaders that are all about action. It is a new era, a new model of what is possible. Now, obviously, this board will be judged on its merits, but there will be some looking on who will worry that in so many different directions right now, the order that has stood the test for 80 years, the post-war order, is fracturing in so many different directions.
Yeah, and I think one of the big concerns for people is that this is going to be seen as a rival to the UN. Trump doesn't particularly like the UN. Trump gets things done. It doesn't necessarily appeal and agree to everybody, but he does, on the whole, try to get things done. And to give him his credit, phase one of his 20-point peace plan for Gaza has largely worked. The fighting largely stopped. I mean, there was a ceasefire, the hostages were released, huge numbers of Palestinians were released. Phase two is going to be a lot harder, and this border peace was initially supposed to be aimed at pushing forward a Gaza peace plan, getting a stabilization force in there, disarming Hamas, rebuilding Gaza. All of that may still happen under a thing called the Gaza Executive Board, which is a part of this board. But it's very clear that Donald Trump's remit, as he sees it, is much bigger than this. It's global, frankly. He sees himself as a peacemaker, as a deal maker. And the fact that all of these world leaders are jumping on board shows that, there's obviously an appeal in this. I think there is a danger for the West here because countries like the UK and Canada and France that are being hesitant about this, they risk getting left behind. You've got Vladimir Putin, who's been invited, Alexander Lukashenko, Belarus, both of whom have been sanctioned by Europe and are supposed to be international pariahs, and yet they're being invited to join the huge membership. I mean, somebody described it as a sort of like belonging to an elite upmarket golf club. But of course, that's just the president. It's going to have very serious things to do. And Donald Trump, as I say, he does have the weight to be able to push things through. It's not always in the direction that everybody likes.
It's a really important point that you make about the Europeans and whether they get left behind. Do they have any leverage in that direction, Frank? I was making the point yesterday that in terms of trade between the United States and Europe, you're talking about a third of global trade. So economically and humanitarianly, the Europeans are usually deeply involved in things that go on in the Middle East. Can they do it without the Europeans?
Yes, to be honest, yes, I think they can. I mean, look at the people who are coming on board: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, Bahrain. These are with a lot of, this is their backyard, Gaza. Obviously, this is taking place where you are in Switzerland, but ostensibly, this is supposed to be. It was launched on the premise of finding peace for the Middle East, and Middle Eastern countries are signing up to it. Europe has much less say in the Middle East now than it used to. As far as Israel's concerned, it's really only interested in what the United States say. It's not, Europe doesn't have a great deal of clout there. There are things going on behind the scenes, such as the UK, for example, training up Palestinian policemen, and likewise in Lebanon. But, they can do without Europe, potentially, yes.
Frank, stay with us because you'll see Jared Kushner in your screens and Steve Witkoff, of course, the envoy who's heading off to the Kremlin this afternoon and is deeply involved in what is happening around Ukraine. Let's listen in.
Maybe most importantly, we have created a sense of all of the bodies except for one, and we will bring that body home too. And maybe most importantly, we have created a sense of hope for what the future can bring in Gaza and all other places where the Board of Peace will operate. And I am so honored, Mr. President, to have worked on this on your behalf. I'd like to thank some people here who are here with us tonight.
I'm presuming
who have done
you're rolling
so
over,
much,
right?
done indispensable work to bring this deal together. Sheikh Mohammed, my good friend from Qatar, and Ali Al-Tawadi, Hakan, Fidan, and Ibrahim, General Hassan, and Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati, and of course, President Sisi, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, former Special Envoy Ron Dermer, and Michael Eisenberg for all that they did. I would also like to thank our core working group and members of the Board of Peace who have been working nonstop on behalf of this incredible, noble effort, around the clock for months on end, sacrificing time with their families and their own personal lives because they believe in the mission and the vision that the President has set out for us. I'd also like to thank, those people include Tony Blair, Yakir Gabay, Josh Grunbaum, Aryeh Lightstone, Laron Tonkman, Admiral Cooper, General Frank, and I probably have forgotten some along the way. And then perhaps most importantly, I want to thank our administration. We have an incredible team. It's amazing to work for this administration. I think you see the results that we get on behalf of the President because he inspires us so much. So I'd like to thank the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, for all of his help and guidance, our Treasury Secretary, of course, the Secretary of State, who we work hand in glove with, and a special thanks to our Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, who is always available to us for consultation, for steering, and for all else that she does. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I have to say, one of the great honors for me of being able to work on this has been working with Steve, who really is as brilliant as he is. His heart is tremendous. He's a lot of fun to be with. And even in some of these, very difficult moments where we didn't think things were happening, working together really was an amazing treat. I'm going to go now today just through a couple quick slides just to show you the progress that's been made in the last couple months. It was just over 100 days ago that we got the final deal done, and everyone was celebrating and joyous about the hostages coming home and the end to this long war that nobody thought was possible. And Steve and I were panicking, saying, what do we do next? You know, how do you implement peace? And as you guys know, peace is a different deal than a business deal because you're changing a mindset. And in Israel, there was 2 years of very intense war. For the people in Gaza, there was more than just 2 years of war. They had 20 years of hopelessness being ruled by a terrorist organization. For the people in the Middle East, their hearts were pulled by this. And throughout the entire world, it really was weighing on us. And so we needed to think about, what do we do next? How do we change the habits? How do we change the behaviors? And we really got to work right away. And the team that Steve thanked, including the White House team and the team, the volunteers, it's really been an incredible effort, very entrepreneurial. And we really did it in the way. I've been working now with President Trump for 10 years on politics. And what continues to amaze me is that he always takes a first principles approach and says, what's the most optimal outcome? Aim for that. Whereas politicians are always focused on the downside or what could go wrong or how to make it a little bit better. He always says, aim for the best possible and, you know, do your best to get there. And if everyone thinks it's impossible, that's even more reason why you should aim for it. And so really thank you for the leadership and the inspiration for doing this. And I think you'll see today we've achieved more than thought was possible. And our ambition is still to go for something, I think, better than most people think is possible as well. So let's see if these things work. They never usually work. Good. So quickly, I'll go through this 2-year war, 90,000 tons of munitions. There's over 60 million tons of rubble there and tens of thousands of fatalities. Through the ceasefire, we were able to get to through the 20-point plan, ceasefire, release of hostages. Getting the UN resolution passed was a huge, huge effort, really thanks to Mike Waltz and the whole team there. They did an incredible job. And we've then, with the help of the UN, we've worked very, very well with them. This is why you need a new organization like the Board of Peace to work with the UN. I want to thank Tom Fletcher. Did an incredible job of really getting it going. We've done historic.
So President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, setting out some of the enormous challenges they're going to face putting Gaza back on its feet. We've got Frank Gardner, our security correspondent, listening across as well. I want to try and balance, Frank, the concerns that have been expressed by the European side with the possibilities that are open here, that this Board of Peace and the vast array of leaders that are sitting on it could achieve. I mean, we shouldn't be entirely cynical about what this might do in the end.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you because, you know, look, when Trump's initiative began and talks began, I think a lot of people thought, well, you know, he doesn't really understand the Middle East in the way that, say, Bill Clinton did. I used to go down to the summits at Sharm el-Sheikh, and Bill Clinton had an absolutely forensic grasp of all the details of where Israeli settlements were, of which UN resolution applied. Donald Trump doesn't do that kind of detail. And yet, to his credit, he has been able to push through phase one of this. He's kind of bulldozed his way through. If you remember, even before Donald Trump took office last year, he sent Steve Witkoff to Israel to go and strong-arm Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu into agreeing a ceasefire, even before he took office. And Witkoff arrived on a Friday during Shabbat, the Sabbath, and was told Prime Minister Netanyahu never sees people on the Sabbath. And Witkoff said, he'll see me. And he got it done. So, you know, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there are reasons for concern here, but there are also reasons for optimism. And I think, you know, let's judge this Board of Peace later on the results that it achieves. Because so far, you know, Trump has got, and the people working for him, Witkoff and Jared Kushner and the Qataris and the Egyptians, they managed to get the Gaza war stopped. It hasn't ended the death toll, sadly, and it hasn't resolved the tragic situation that the Gazans still find themselves in. And it hasn't brought a true and lasting and fair peace to the Middle East, to that part of the Middle East. It certainly hasn't done anything to resolve the very bad things where a number of Israelis are running rogue and essentially trying to destroy any possibility of a future Palestinian state. But look at the heavyweight leaders that are on this board. Look at the amount of international popularity it has. So I think, you know, there are some signs that this could work. Look, we're in a much better today than we were yesterday when people were talking about oh my God, is NATO actually going to disintegrate? Is there going to be an armed conflict between Denmark and the United States over Greenland? We're not completely out of the woods on that yet. But this is a better day than it was yesterday, I think, for world peace.
Yes, I think that's a good characterisation of it. Frank Gardner, good to talk to you. Thank you very much for the moment. If you are just joining us, welcome to Davos, a week of extraordinary developments on the world stage. The US president currently on stage at the core of it all. In the last hour, he has been signing the memorandum that inaugurates the Board of Peace. The group will be made up of world leaders. It was originally conceived, as we've just been discussing, to deal with the plan to rebuild Gaza, but its mandate certainly is being expanded. And in the last hour, the founding members came together in this signing ceremony. Some 20 other dignitaries have signed the agreement. They range from the presidents of Uzbekistan, Argentina, Azerbaijan, to representatives from Turkey and the Gulf countries. And President Trump has said the board will work in the months ahead in conjunction with the United States. There are some critics, as Frank's just explained, that have argued it is lined up to replace some of the UN's functions. But important here too is who we've not seen on stage. The Europeans not present. We've heard from several countries this week that they won't be involved at this initial stage. One of them is Britain. The Foreign Secretary saying today they wouldn't be taking part. They'll take a view on this, and there are concerns about the involvement of President Putin. Let's hear then from Donald Trump. He started when he made the speech at the beginning, talking about the importance of what they're trying to do here.
And now we have one of the most important meetings of all, the official formation of what is known as the Board of Peace. I want to thank the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and their extraordinary work. I mean, they've done an amazing job. We have peace in the Middle East. Nobody thought that was possible. We've settled 8 wars, and I believe another one's coming pretty soon. You know what that is? The one that I thought was going to be an easy one has turned out to be probably the most difficult. Last month, 29,000 people died, mostly soldiers, in Ukraine, Russia. Think of that, 29,000, 27,000 in the month before, 26,000 in the month before that. It's terrible. But we have meetings and we think we're making a lot of progress.
Yeah, the US team saying that there is only one outstanding issue to deal with in the peace process, the negotiating between Ukraine and Russia. And indeed, Steve Witkoff, who is a special envoy who wears many hats, is heading off to the Kremlin later this afternoon to sit down again with President Putin. But while on stage, he talked about his role in the Middle East and the many friends he's made along the way, bringing the fighting to an end in Gaza.
We have achieved a peace deal in Gaza. We have brought the hostages home, all of the bodies except for one, and we will bring that body home too. And maybe most importantly, we have created a sense of hope for what the future can bring in Gaza and all other places where the Board of Peace will operate.
There are many people in the Trump orbit who come and go, but Steve Witkoff, at least for this first year of the second term, has been a constant. Another, of course, is Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who is part of this. And the person who puts it all out front for the journalists like me is, of course, Caroline Levitt. She's currently on stage introducing these leaders and the panel that is sitting alongside Donald Trump. Let's have a listen to her.
Begin this journey. Who would have thought 2 years ago that we will be sitting here with this group of countries, with this leadership, giving the people of Gaza a new chance? Who would have thought that last Friday I would be sitting, Mr. President, in Cairo with an amazing group of Palestinian technocrats, people who you don't see on the news, people who are not media personalities, but who are experts, who are committed to giving their people a chance in life. And this is what this is all about. For too long, Gazans, Palestinians and Israelis have lived with conflict, with death, with destruction.
Yes, this man in your screens at the moment is Nikolai Mladenov. He's the former Bulgarian defence minister, but he also served more recently as the special coordinator for the Middle East peace process. He is currently the High Representative for Gaza within this structure. So let's listen in.
And President Trump, we have a great group of countries joining the Board of Peace and more to come. We have a fantastic Palestinian team on the ground, and we must make it work. Our partnerships are there, our plans are in place, and we need your support. And finally, I look to all of you who are in this room and who are watching this meeting from their screens at home or in their offices. Please put away your talking points for a minute. Please put away your fears. Please put away your concerns. Please stop listening to the rumors and to the gossip. Focus on what we have to do today, because the future of 2 million Palestinians is at stake, and if we give them a chance, we will do more than that. We will create opportunities for 1 billion people who live in the Middle East and beyond, and who are responsible, also who want to see transformation and a chance in life for the future. So please join us on this journey, join the Board of Peace, and join us in supporting this excellent initiative. And thank you again, President Trump and the United States, for taking this decisive leadership forward.
Thank you. President Trump, would you like to make some concluding remarks?
Well, I just want to tell you it's all happening. And one of the first things I said when we really got involved in this project, and it's a big one, but it's very doable, I said to Jared and Steve and some of the other folks, including Larry Fink, and congratulations on the great success. The two of you have done a fantastic job. This is bigger and better than ever. We usurped some of your time for a very important reason, and you understand that better than anybody, and we appreciate that you're here very much. Thank you both very much. But I said that, you know, this is a great location. It all begins, see, I'm a real estate person at heart, and it's all about location. And I said, look at this location on the sea. Look at this beautiful piece of property, what it could be for so many people. It'll be so great. People that are living so poorly are going to be living so well. But it all began with the location. That's the vision. They look out on the waters, and very few places are like it. So we put together a team that's outstanding, a team that's done it before, a team that I think has done tougher jobs. If you want to know the truth, we've done some tough jobs. And we continue to. As far as the United States is concerned, we're behind it. And the United States has never been stronger, never been bigger, better. It's doing really well. You see that, building thousands of businesses, plants, factories all over the United States are right now under construction. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And this is just an honor to be involved with this, and to be involved with the great people in this room and the great leaders that are sitting on stage. We thank you very much. And we have many others that have signed up, and they all want to be members of the Board of Peace, because it really will be important. This is not going to be a waste of time. We waste so much time on things that never happen. This will happen, and it's already happening. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor to be with you. Thank you. Thank you.
President Trump, with his concluding remarks at the end of a signing ceremony to inaugurate the Board of Peace, which I guess is the opening salvo, if you will, in phase 2 of the Middle East peace process. There is so much detail to get into about what this board is, how it functions, what the various layers of it are. But it is a board that will drive things forward. Whatever people say about Donald Trump, and he has his many detractors, he is a president of action. And you heard there from his High Representative to Gaza saying, give it a chance. Don't form opinions, put away the bullet points. Let's see what this board does. Of course, there have been so many failed experiments when it comes to the Middle East and Gaza, and there will be a lot of cynicism about what this board can do. But as Frank Gardner was telling you just a little earlier, you can't discount it. You can't discount it because of the people that are sitting on stage and the people who are joining this board. And albeit the Europeans are not there, by power of force, President Trump is going to put all his weight behind this board. And let's face it, anything that moves the situation forward in Gaza must surely be a good thing. Joining me to discuss it is David Wearing. He's the assistant professor in international relations at the University of Sussex. Have I couched that in the right language, do you think, David? Do we need to give this Board of Peace a chance? Yes, it sets itself against the UN Charter and the UN bodies, but if it delivers, and we must judge it on its merits, then surely it's a good thing.
I think we have to not suspend our rational sort of capacities and look at the record of the people who are on this Board of Peace. Look at the chairman himself. I mean, are these credible people to be promoting peace? Are these credible people to deliver the interests of the Palestinian people? I mean, it's not cynical to say that they aren't. It's just a recognition of reality. I mean, look at Trump, for example. He could have called that war off in Gaza a lot earlier than he did. You know, I mean, the Israelis are militarily dependent on him. He facilitated their genocide and their war crimes for 7 or 8 months before he finally called a halt to it. I mean, the fact that Netanyahu himself has been invited onto the Board of Peace, the fact that Putin has been invited onto the Board of Peace, it just makes the whole thing a bit of a farce. Trump has been pretty clear that he holds international law in contempt. He said that in an interview with New York Times a week or so ago, that the only thing that constrains him is his own mind and his own morality. So the idea that, you know, you can have a meaningful, quote unquote, Board of Peace and a meaningful body that promotes peace that's led by people like this is obviously a travesty. And I don't think it's cynical to say that. I think it's just looking at the evidence and drawing rational conclusions from the evidence.
Yeah, I think you make some very important points and points that the European leaders have already made here in Davos this week, and not least the fact that the humanitarian situation on the ground, several months after the peace treaty was signed, is still in a horrendous situation. And again, people will be concerned just at the end there, how we return to the language of building property in Gaza. It was sort of styled on the Riviera of the Middle East language that he was using last year, which offended so many people. So you're right to be sceptical. How do you see it working in conjunction with the UN? Because, as I was saying earlier, when it comes to solving international crises, we do that within the remit of the General Assembly and the Security Council. Resolutions are passed and voted on. There's so much detail around how this operation will work that we don't yet know.
Yeah, it's very, very obscure. And one other thing, that doesn't breed confidence is the fact that, I mean, this Board of Peace was originally set up in respect of Gaza, and it was done pursuant to a UN Security Council resolution last autumn. Now, there was no suggestion that the so-called Board of Peace would develop this global remit that it seems now to be claiming. It seems to have been given the kind of imprimatur of legitimacy by the UN, only to then shift the goalposts and present itself almost as an alternative UN, but under the sort of domination of Trump as this all-powerful chairman of the board. I mean, there's the fact that most of the world's countries haven't been invited to sit on the Board of Peace. I think it's only 60 out of 193, I think, states in the UN system. And the other thing that indicates that there's going to be a degree of dysfunction here, apart from who the chairman is, apart from the kind of sneaky way that it's expanded its remit, is the fact that even half of the invitees have decided not to join. And these are the bigger states, by the way. China, Russia, the major European states have either rejected the invitation from Trump, or they've, ignored it for now. So the way it's come about has been a bit, as I say, a bit sneaky. This wasn't the remit they were given by the UN. It's then not been, put together in a way that inspires confidence. It clearly hasn't got the confidence of many states. So, many reasons to think that it's not going to work out as advertised.
Just stay with me a moment, because President Trump's come out of the room and he's in front of the press. Let's just listen in.
Will you have control of all of Greenland, Mr. President?
How many countries? Mr. President,
well, we're going to ask how many countries? I think over 50. I think over 50.
What is your plan for Ukraine, Mr. Trump? What's your plan for Ukraine, sir? What is your plan for Ukraine? What will you say to Vladimir Zelensky
today? I meet with Ukraine, as you know, today. I meet with the president, and we'll be discussing it. We're meeting with President Putin today or tomorrow, and some people are going over. And I think they're getting close. A lot of people are being killed. We got to get it done. If we don't get that done, it would be a disgrace.
When will you speak with President Putin?
What are you going to do with Yemen?
So President Trump heading off to his meetings imminently with President Zelensky, who has arrived here in Switzerland. David Wearing, Assistant Professor in International Relations at the University of Sussex, is still with me. Just on that issue, you were talking before we listened in on Donald Trump about the expanding remit of the Board of Peace. When he gets in front of President Zelensky this afternoon, I can see a scenario where he might try and pressure him to join the Board of Peace, because one of the difficulties the Americans have had is getting the two men in the same room. And maybe this is a way to manufacture that, David? Do you think there will be some pressure on Zelensky?
I mean, we know already from Trump's second term, the way he's approached Ukraine, that the likelihood is that he will continue to put pressure on Zelensky to capitulate to what most of us regard as Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And this, it could be another forum for that. I mean, it seems to me that if you look at the invitees to the Board of Peace and who, the so-called Board of Peace, and who's joined and who hasn't, it's the countries who feel more capable of saying no that have joined, and the countries that feel less capable of saying no. It's the countries that feel more capable of saying no who haven't joined, and the countries who feel less capable of saying no that have joined. And Ukraine is probably in that second category, given the continued dependence on the Americans that they've got, unfortunately. So Zelensky could well feel compelled to have discussions under this quote-unquote board of peace remit. But he's also got his ties with the Europeans, and the Europeans aren't joining, so he'll want to keep them involved because they're his lifeline at the moment.